Hey everyone, Jeff Macaron here, and today I've got a really fun video for you for a change. Matt Schofield was in town. We were doing a gig together at New York City's Bitter End, and I always have a great time hanging out with Matt and talking music. He's one of the most insightful people I know about blues, blues guitar, and blues history. I thought it'd be a really great opportunity to sit down with him and share with you what we think are the 10 blues guitar players that matter most. The video's a little bit longer, but I think it's worth your time, so let's check it out. Hey everyone, I am here today with my great friends and great guitar player, Matt Schofield.
Hello there.
And today we're going to talk about the top 10 blues guitar players that matter most. I'm going to leave all this talking to Matt because besides being a great guitar player, we all know, you know a ton about blues guitar. Way more than I do, a real historian.
It's all I know about.
But yes, but you know more about it in a much more insightful way than anybody I've ever encountered, to be honest. So what we're also going to do is we're going to start at number 1 because it's easier to talk about the lineage and the effect that these people had moving down the list through history. So we're going to start at number 1, and that is, of course,
B.B. King.
Right. And why would that be?
Well, he kind of is where it all comes together for guitar playing. Now, there was amazing guitarists before B.B., but all these guys are like a watershed moment, right? Is how I view them. And B.B. is where what you might think of as lead guitar and what's gone on to be rock guitar playing. It starts really with B.B. Now, his influences were guys like Django Reinhardt, Charlie Christian, both playing incredible solos, sophisticated lines, more like, they were getting stuff from the horn players in the bands that they were in, etc. But B.B. comes along and the guitar sings for the first time. It really sings. And so much of the kind of melodic ideas that we all still use really crystallize with that man and his guitar playing. So I don't think you can really have any grasp on playing blues if you haven't taken the time to study B.B. And which B.B. King? I mean, his career was 60 years. Mm-hmm. He made hundreds of records. Obviously, there's the classics that you must have, Live at the Regal. I love Blues is King. And
by the way, me onto that record.
Yeah, and you want to hear where Peter Green comes from?
It is like, true. Yeah.
So he's the beginning of the vocabulary that we all use, and in a melodic and sophisticated way. You see, B.B.'s a combination of the Delta blues. I know I mentioned Django and Charlie Christian, but equally he's learning from, like, his cousin was a guy called Booker White, Delta slide player. Blind Lemon Jefferson was one of his other guys, and the other guy that really was doing guitar solos like we think of guitar solos before B.B. and influenced B.B. was T-Bone Walker. Mm-hmm. So who's also on our list here,
Comes
right?
in at number 2.
Yeah. Now, not my go-to guy.
Right.
So he's not someone I put on a lot, but nonetheless, I mean, it's easier to explain by playing something with T-Bone. The blues box that everybody plays. That's T-Bone. T-Bone was the guy who started soloing. That's T-Bone. And B.B. got his start with playing solos. The history and the context is so important at this. It's like guitar's quite new. Mm-hmm. Certainly electric guitar. And we are talking squarely about electric blues here. But really, we're talking about electric guitar because it wasn't a thing before that either. And so any type of electric guitar playing, even the most advanced crazy shred stuff these days, or whatever anybody's doing, has its roots in these players that were the first guys to plug in a guitar into an amplifier, turn it up, and take a solo. I mean, that's how important these guys are. So like I say, it's not even about liking it. It's about being aware of where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So T-Bone, I have to include, even though he's not one of my go-to guys, but for everyone since. Yep. That's why I say they're watershed moments, and these guys created the stuff we play. So T-Bone next.
I agree. All right, number 3, we have Muddy Waters.
Yeah, Muddy Waters. Again, not really about the guitar playing per se. It's about using the guitar in a context. And I'm sure this isn't 100% accurate interpretation of history, but if you look at the time when Muddy's starting, he goes from the Mississippi Delta, where guys are playing unaccompanied solo guitar, traditional kind of Delta blues. And he goes to Chicago, and he starts a band, to the point where I would say that what we think of as a band these days, so you think of drums, bass, couple of guitarists, and a singer, your classic rock band lineup, maybe a keyboard player. That's Muddy Waters. A band, because you had big bands before that. You had orchestras. You've got Duke Ellington, and you've got the New Orleans jazz bands. But I mean, at that point, pre-Muddy, even the idea of a drum kit as we know it. They were in New Orleans. They're playing a bass drum, and then the second line was the snares, and so on and so on. So this whole thing kind of crystallizes as a band lineup that we think of, with Muddy Waters going to Chicago and starting a band. I mean, it's phenomenal, really. You take it for granted what a band is. And of course, I'm sure there are other guys that were doing what they call small combos.
Yeah, like Hot Five with Louis Armstrong and the whole But
with electric guitars,
a band. Yeah, a band.
Yeah, plugged into amps.
Yep.
Even the harmonica player, Little Walter, that was the defining moment of. My harmonica playing friends would be able to explain it the same as I can for the guitar. Little Walter's like the OG there, was playing his harmonica into a Fender Bassman.
That's true.
Which, you got to say, this is the 50s. These things have only just been invented,
And then that sound was born.
Yeah. So it wasn't a thing before that.
A bullet mic into the...
Yeah. And Muddy playing his Telecaster into Super Reverb, Well, he was playing it into something else, because the Super Reverb didn't come around until 64. So, it's impossible to exaggerate how visionary these people were. I don't think even intentionally, do you know what I mean?
I was just about to ask that. I think it was probably just something that happened organically. Let's put it together, and this sounds good. And
it was a way to be heard.
What was that?
And... I often think about that with all these guys that we're going to talk about, the early guys. Not only is the musical context important, the historical context of the time in the country, in the United States, and what was going on. Guys like Muddy and BB were born on plantations in the South, and they didn't have a huge choice of opportunities in life, Muddy was born in the
Mississippi.
in the early 1900s, and BB was born in the 20s. And really only they were on plantation. It's a step up from slavery still at that point. It's only one notch up, and they're not really free to do whatever they want. They're born on a plantation, and you stay on the plantation. And BB actually ran away to Memphis, so it's impossible for me to separate that incredible endeavor. I mean, you think it's tough doing gigs these days, man. It's like BB had to run away from the plantation. So it's a different thing. So it was a way for their voice to be heard as individuals, and that's what makes the music great, and that's what gave them a sound on the instrument. And if you listen to Muddy Waters' music, the song "Mannish Boy" is easy to take for granted. It's very famous. It's the famous riff, that everybody knows as a blues riff. But if you actually listen to the lyrics, he's saying, "Don't call me boy, I'm a man," because he was called boy by the plantation owners and the rest of society, back then. So I can't not see this stuff in the context of history and culture, and it's everything.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, we have Albert King.
Albert King, comes right after BB. He's like, well, first of all, his name wasn't even King.
Oh,
he was Albert Nielsen.
No way.
But BB King was doing well, so Albert was like, "I'm going to be the king too." And so he did. And while BB's got this, sweet kind of singing kind of sound, Albert comes along and basically completely redefines bending strings on the guitar. I mean, if you bend more, like, again, easiest to show sometimes, but T-Bone, who was an influence on both BB and Albert, was bending like a quarter bend, because big heavy strings back then as well, you know. But then Albert comes along and goes, nobody had ever done that before.
No.
I mean, it's so obvious to us all now as guitar players, but until he did it, I don't think anybody had bent a string that far.
And also the physicality with the guitar playing lefty, with the high
upside
strings upside down. I think like the bend,
so unique.
Yeah, and also I think the bend physically was easier. I mean, he's a big dude, but
yeah, there is something about
like I've gravitational, pull of the
yeah. I've strung a guitar upside down just to mess around with over the years and put the strings on the top, and or take a lefty guitar and play it, and there is a different pull to it.
I agree.
It sounds different, and that thing, Albert bends and then puts vibrato on the top of the bend, that kind of thing. That's BB explained it as well, but those guys were predominantly hearing slide guitarists in the Delta. That was the guitar solos they heard, and then T-Bone comes along playing single note lines. You got some guys in jazz playing single note lines. So first BB and then Albert, they kind of take that, they get rid of the slide and they start bending and vibrato. I mean, I should have mentioned it with BB, but like what we think of as modern vibrato on almost any style of guitar, it starts with those guys.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a thing. You had maybe the classical players doing that kind of, sideways thing, but BB, that.
Yeah. They're really hitting it. Yeah.
Whole different ball games.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Albert, if you listen to Strange Brew from Cream,
sure.
This guitar solo is note for note, literally note
for note
of Pretty Woman by Albert King. So there you go.
Yeah.
Just a quick intermission. If you would like the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. Also, don't forget I have a free Arpeggios Unlocked ebook and mini course that's available using the link above or below over at GM Guitar Lessons. Also, since we're talking about the blues, I've got my solo electric blues guitar course on sale for a special price. Now back to the video.
All right, so next up, Freddie King.
Yeah, Old Kings. Also not actually born a king, so he was another one who I'll have a piece of that action. And that was the thing, but it's like that was the way these guys got themselves out there. It's a very different music industry.
Yeah.
But Freddie, many of you probably know Hideaway, The Stumble, all covered later on by all the British guys. But Freddie was writing these guitar instrumentals with hooks and parts, and it wasn't just like blowing a solo over a back-end. They're like little songs, but they're instrumentals. And again, that's like a totally new thing that's coming along. We're using the guitar as the feature. Even if you listen to early BB King, the guitar solos there may be one chorus.
Right.
Maybe they're not even a whole, maybe it's just fills between the vocals. So this whole time, the guitar is expanding in its context, expanding in its use and how it's presented as an art form of unto itself. Do you know? Not just an accompaniment thing. It's becomes its own voice. And Freddie, with those instrumentals, he makes the guitar a feature of the whole song. So he also started bringing in, like later on, like a lot of like funky elements. I might argue that Freddie King was like the first blues rocker. He started getting heavier than the other guys and like heavier grooves in the band, and pushing things that way.
Like Going Down just pops to my head. Like
like
a heavier vibe. That became a rock classic after that.
Exactly. Several of his tunes did. Sure, of course. So he really starts catching the ear of the British guys, and so Impossible to, he's after BB and Albert, but those are the three kings like that and also you have to kind of think these guys have like smaller vocabularies than we're used to hearing people with these days. But that's because it's easy these days to just listen to what they did and put them all together.
Yeah.
It's really
these
easy
are the
to
guys
do.
that started it.
Yeah, but they didn't have something to just take. They really came up with these sounds, and they all have these features of their playing that are so distinct, you know. So it's like it's not a big vocabulary, but it's a totally unique one. All these guys' approach is completely as different from one to the next as it could be, and yet it's all comes together in this sound on the guitar. So.
Now you see why I asked Matt to do this. All right, next we have Albert Collins.
Albert Collins, yeah. Again, could you find a more unique player? He's tuned. He's tuned at F minor. You know, I mean, so he's actually tuned to upper semitone. Got the capo. Usually, you know, he's playing at least up in A, B flat. You know, C, even D. Sometimes he's even got the capo right up at like the 12th fret. And completely unique tech, fingers, you know. I mean, we could talk about the technique of each one of these guys for a whole video, you know. Maybe we'll do that. So pick one and do a whole video on each guy. But right now, just to say that it becomes, the guitar becomes like this kind of, almost like a weapon with Albert Collins, you know, like he's firing. So you get this energy starting at this point. So Albert's more coming around in like the mid 60s, you know? And you get this high energy attacking style, which again just goes on to inform everything that comes after it. These, you know, there's all these guys, there's before them and after them. And he's another one that a big influence on Hendrix at the time. And just, funky start again, sort of. But now you got James Brown as well. So
that's influencing all this stuff as well.
You know, like you get this sort of cyclic thing of it feeds back into it, because James Brown is kind of coming out of the blues. Then we've got funk, so the blues guys start getting funky. You know, so Albert just completely redefines how you can like attack the guitar. Really physically, you know.
And all these guys, which I love, obviously, the second you hear like that cliche one note, you know it's them immediately, which is just the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
All right, so next up we have Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy, still with us.
The last of the
real guys, you know. He played with Muddy Waters. He was in Muddy's band for a short time, and I think Buddy's like 88, 89 now, maybe.
I'm not sure, but
still touring. Not as much as he used to, but still touring.
I think it's supposed to be the last tour.
But it's been the last one for a while. I mean, I think it's one of those things of like,
it's like Ozzy touring. They no more tour. Ozzy, Muddy, you know, BB, Muddy.
It's wild, man, to be touring at nearly 90. But again, in the context of guitar history, what happens when Buddy comes along is you get kind of the first, or one of the first. And as I say, I sound very emphatic about when I say the first, or it was the first person to do that. It's not that simple, but essentially, these guys defined this particular kind of thing. And in Buddy's case, it was playing the guitar with wild abandon. It wasn't played like that before Buddy. And huge influence on Hendrix. I mean, he was this guy because just basically getting on the guitar and just freaking out on the guitar and just going, what can I do with this? Even beyond trying to, you know, just play the song or something. It's just like, I'm just going to go crazy on this thing. And that's what Buddy gave us. Nobody had really just gone that wild before. It was all quite controlled and considered, you know?
It's funny, I've always noticed that about his playing, but it wasn't until talking today, right, the little talk before this, that you brought that up. I was like, I never even thought of that. Of course. I mean, that's that point where he just, and even stuff like if he wasn't making it, so to speak, who cares?
It's not really about that.
No, it's about the vibe. And you're totally right.
And, you know, I was lucky enough to see him, one of the first proper gigs I ever went to. I was like 14 years old. And it was BB, Buddy, Dr. John and the Fabulous Thunderbirds. Good gig.
Sure.
And, you know, he was wild on that. But playing great as well, you know. So maybe he was in his not even 60, probably 55 or something like that. So just completely another game changer, another watershed moment where some guy comes out and goes nuts on the guitar.
Awesome.
You know, you got to think it's all new, and for a while people are just strumming chords and all of that, and then he's just wailing, and he makes it free. He makes the guitar like a free, expressive vehicle. In fact, expressive is the word for all these guys. They all helped us make this instrument arguably one of the most expressive instruments you can play, because of the way they all invented things like bending and vibrato, and it's so unique in that respect that your fingers are touching it in that, you know, it's different than a keyboard, and the way you can shape the note yourself. So all these guys created these forms of expression.
So next up is
Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
Again, talk about watershed moment there.
Absolutely.
In the context of guitar playing history, really Eric comes along and invents rock guitar by taking all the guys we've talked about already, every single one of them, and then turning it way up. And those guys, not to say that those guys were quiet, but they didn't have Marshalls and stuff.
Right.
So there's a big
shift.
Yeah, there's a big kind of meeting of like equipment and player that happens somewhat, I guess.
And the input of just a different culture, you know, not Americans, you know, the British, and what coming out of the war and what was left there, and you know, the recovery period.
Yeah, there's
post, you know, you could speak more about that than I could, but yeah, I think that people don't take the context of when this all happened into mind. I think about Eric Clapton at another point in time, and they'll have something.
And he's been around for all of our lives. I mean, which first of all, it's not easy to do either, to be a somewhat relevant artist from the beginning of that even being a thing. You know, like he started out when pop music was just starting along with the Beatles, and then he's so say what you want, you know, I know he's quite a divisive figure these days, Eric. But you can't really play the guitar without acknowledging his contribution, because the guitar would not sound the same. You can make all kinds of, you know, theoretical arguments that somebody would have done it or whatever, you know. And there were other guys playing. But certainly, as we were saying, an honorary mention to... but
this into that. There's one guy.
That was it.
That was it. The one guy.
Yeah. And... so he kind of invented rock guitar, and nothing was the same after that.
And we still talk about the B note tone. We still talk about that's the defining guitar, and also, you know, the approach to the really extended guitar solo that became the standard thing.
Yes, now he takes from Freddie's instrumentals, Freddie King's stuff, and it really becomes like, oh, you can just play the guitar all the way through the song. So. Yeah, before that, if you listen to BB and Albert King records, it's one, maybe two choruses of solo. Live a little bit more, they're stretching out.
Right.
But now it's on. Now it's like just you can just play the guitar for as long as you like.
Yeah.
A whole new thing there, you know.
Absolutely. I dropped my list. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, so Eric Clapton, yes, divisive, but I'm with you on that. Wait until I do my rock list. I'll be divisive as well. Next up is Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Sort of the next thing that happens, isn't it? You know, in blues, I mean, a lot of people talk, including a lot of the original guys, they all loved Stevie because he made it visible again. The kind of, in a lot of ways, the interest that many of us have these days is built upon Stevie making it visible for us at a time that it wasn't anymore, you know? And... well, I remember there was other guys involved in that period in the 80s, you know, Robert Cray and also Stevie's brother Jimmy Vaughan, who pretty much is the OG of white guys in bowling shirts and 50s hairdos playing blues, and there's plenty of those around. And there's Jimmy Vaughan, you know? And so you had this yin and yang with Stevie and Jimmy, but in terms of the guitar, you know, Stevie just comes along and hands it to everyone again and goes, look, this is how you can do it, you know? The
funny thing was, you know, I grew up, you know, being a rock guy, and then MTV came on, and I I heard Stevie there for the first time. And I was hearing blues on MTV, and I was like, this is unlike anything I've ever heard before. And I didn't even think of that it was blues. It didn't register that it was blues.
Yeah.
Because I was not, this blues to me was Zeppelin and things like that.
Right.
I understood that it had a lineage that I was not aware of. But that was the first time I was like, well, who's this?
And Stevie's music was also Stevie's music,
of course,
as much as it was blues. As is all these guys on this. Like we talk about the guitar playing, of course, with guitarists. But they all only exist because they were able to put that in the context of an entire package and present it to the world as well, which is really important. So
with good songs and singing.
Singing, they're entertainers as well, great live performers, all of them improvisers, by the way. There's nobody that wasn't an improviser. Nobody's figuring out solos to play in anywhere on this list.
Yeah.
It's about improvising. So Stevie just managed to kind of wrap it all up into a package. And, already there's a lot of blues rock and rock music by the time Stevie comes along.
Yeah.
So he kind of just loops it back to the guys we've been talking about before, really, whereas he is rocking, I would say.
But he's a blues
guitarist. He's a blues guitarist.
Yeah.
And the guys... The blues guitarists agreed with that as well. He always got the props.
Yeah.
And Buddy Guy talks about him. A great interview. Buddy saying it was like, turns out he had the skeleton key to the closet that those blues guys were kept in. And he's like, and Stevie came along and he manages to unlock this. And hey, look, there's Buddy Guy, there's B.B. King, there's
Albert Collins,
Albert King. Yeah. So important. And again, like. It's impossible, really, to not.
And a great rock star.
Yeah. It's impossible not to acknowledge his place in the context of this instrument and playing blues.
Absolutely. I think he's like one of those people, I refer to him as like Jupiter.
Yeah.
Like the gravitational pull.
Yeah, you can't not.
To sound or want to, if you play a Strat, it's really difficult to not be sucked into that sound,
I wrestled with it for years of going, can I play a Strat and not sound exactly like Stevie? And that became a real thing for me to try and achieve because I love Strats.
Yep.
And of course, he and many other guys made me want to play Strats.
Sure.
In fact, it was the instrument of my coming of age, late 80s and early 90s, starting to play. Eric Clapton's doing the Blues Nights thing at the Royal Albert Hall, and it's Eric, Robert Cray, Jimmy Vaughan was on the second time, Buddy Guy. It's a stage full of Strats.
Yeah,
True. Yeah. So it was like, you got to get one of these.
Yeah.
But talk about, Stevie just kind of completely redefined the Strat after Hendrix, who, of course, he's not on this list, Jimmy, because you can't really package him into a blues thing.
Right.
Somebody's going to be mentioning him in the comments.
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys that we're going to do some honorable mention, but there are guys that I love that, is Jimmy Page. I love the way Jimmy Page plays blues, but is he a blues guitar player? No, he's a rock blues. And I feel like Hendrix, though being a big blues fan and played blues, is the consummate rock guitar player in my mind.
And again, that's a different kind of watershed moment for everyone.
Exactly, and that'll be another list and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so finally on our list, number 10 is...
Robin Ford.
I'm in agreement,
And, when I started learning to play, it was all the guys up to this point on the list. And, and I was playing in bands and it was everyone, and everybody kind of either played like Chicago blues, and you had a harmonica player, and you were kind of like the T-Birds, Jimmy Vaughan's band, Feathers Thunderbirds back in the day. There was either that side of things, or there was the Stevie Ray side of things. Because late '80s, early '90s, when I'm starting, that's what it had become in the UK. Certainly, nobody was. Well, in fact, it had got very pentatonic-y, the sound of guitar that I initially grew up on. That's what it was, minor pentatonic. And then Robin Ford comes along, and another massive watershed moment, I think, for anyone of my generation. And I know I can speak for many of my friends who you guys would all know, Josh Smith and Kirk, and I mean, it's like he is like the last watershed for us, where it changed again.
Yep.
And it's really important to acknowledge that, how massive he has been for the next generation. I call myself a post Robin Ford player, because I had everything up to that and then that as well. And that's as far as, that's like my last watershed moment,
Yeah.
Now everybody sounds like that. If you know what I mean, it's impossible to not.
Yep.
Unless you're playing real, there's guys on, like, you go to blues festivals and there's the guys that are really trying to do almost like historical reenactment style, I would say. It's not criticism, but some people like to play blues like to sound as much like the 50s chess records as they can, and that's fine. So that's not interesting to me personally. I'm interested in the lineage from these guys. So although the Blues Police don't consider Robin a real blues player,
Nope.
to me, he is more in the tradition of those guys because he's got a voice on the instrument.
And all those guys love him.
Yeah. So so he was like the last watershed, and for me, I can only talk about that because I'm sure there's been another watershed moment for other people these days.
Yeah,
but
for him, it was, getting into blues and blues rock, as a big rocker, and then being a fusion guy. And then I was actually, of course I knew, like, talk to your daughter when I was in college. Robin came and did a clinic, and he played blues, like it's a solo blues, and he put in all those changes in his way that, and I was like, that's what I want to be able to do. Same kind of thing. It opened everything up for me because
most of us
jazz.
have not heard anybody do it like that before.
Yeah.
And that's what this list is about, in my opinion. So that's why he has to be on it. And people, call him a fusion player or a jazz player, but he's not. He's a blues player that was one of the first to really. And listen, Robin played with Muddy briefly. He played with Jimmy Witherspoon. He played with Charlie Musselwhite. You don't get the gig, man, if you're not blues. But he just had the biggest vocabulary of anyone up till that point.
He considers himself a blues guitar player, which is, when you hear like the Yellow Jackets, they'll be like, wait, what?
And funnily enough, my favorite stuff from Robin is when he just plays blues. That's what I like hearing him do. So, so watershed moments. It's like all of these guys the guitar is different for everybody that wants to play in that genre. Yeah. It's different for them after that, I
agree.
It's different.
So now we're probably going to get the hate, like, what about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so
what
quick
about?
Honorable mentions.
What about him?
Yeah, what about honorable mentions? And look, these are all opinions and where we came from. Certainly Mike Bloomfield would fall into that, having both good friends with Robin and having Robin play Bloomfield for me at his place, saying, listen. And I'm like,
I don't get it.
Like, I get why you get it, I guess. But me playing him, my favorite thing is him going, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting...
And it fits really into what we're talking about, the context and time. And I know Robin would explain that, Mike Bloomfield was like his Clapton. And he loved Eric as well. But Mike was kind of the first white guy in America playing blues. And as I say, when I say first or like emphatic, it's broader than that. But we're making a point, really. Yeah. Mike was the first guy, and he was in Chicago. Him, Paul Butfield, and those guys, that band, they were playing the circuit with Howlin' Wolf. By the way, Hubert Sumlin, I just thought of another guy that's honorable mention, But we love Hubert. But they were playing in Chicago on the circuit with Wolf and Muddy in the 60s. Yeah. So not trivial. No. Not trivial, but I just don't care for his style.
Myself included. Who else? Wait.
We always get Rory Gallagher.
Rory Gallagher. Gallagher.
Is it Gallagher?
Yeah, I've been told by
I've never heard that
an Irish friend.
Oh, really?
Gallagher. Jimmy Vaughan. We mentioned Jimmy Vaughan, but Jimmy certainly.
Yeah, just like the king of cool, and like he just completely defined a way. And by the way, if you have never seen old Fabulous Thunderbirds, on YouTube there's a concert live from Rock Palast in 1980. Jimmy's got his foot in a cast. He's broken his leg. He's got his leg in a cast. Still cool as anything. And they are a punk band as well. They are playing. They are from Texas, playing Chicago blues, but they're like 26-year-old kids, and they are snotty, punky little badasses. And you think this is in like 1980, so they're somehow putting the context of the time, the musical spirit, that was happening. Because I'm not really a punk music fan, but it's kind of the same as blues in a lot of ways. It's a reaction to its place and time, and it comes about because of cultural reasons as much as musical reasons. So you watch the old T-Birds on Rock Palast, they're a bunch of punks. And it's good.
I gotta check it out.
It's badass, and he's just playing like a beautiful beat up 50 Strat Sunburst into a pair of super reverbs with a curly chord and a broken foot. And it's like, it's lean and mean, and it's just so. I love Jimmy. I love him so much.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. And a long one, but I think it'll be fun. And so please hit the like and subscribe. Please check out Matt's site, mattschofield.com.
Please do.
Pick up his records, his True Fire courses, all those things.
Come to the gigs.
gigs
in real life.
Yeah, come to the gigs in real life.
It's definitely best in live still.
Yes, for sure. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.